What did little Shelise go through? But when I actually see the age of my own daughter and realize that someone was capable of those things.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Rosales.
And I'm Shelise Jonathan.
And this is Cults to Consciousness, where we discuss leaving high-demand religions or organizations and finding healing and independence through awareness and true individual sovereignty. If you're only listening and you prefer to see our faces, we're in studio today. Things are a little different, obviously. Shelise is in the hot seat. I'm the one interviewing. Head on over to YouTube, where you can interact with the post. Make sure to like, subscribe, do all those YouTube-y things. And remember, these are real people.
I'm a real person.
This isn't just a true crime podcast. You're real, and we want to see that support in the comments. So make sure to leave those encouraging words, and especially for me, because I need validation that I'm doing a good job as a host. So that being said, no, we really did want to do a more intimate, personal
Expose.
catch up.
Yeah,
because there's this thing we're doing, Cults to Consciousness, and I feel like, we've hopped on and we've done some behind the scenes stuff, but I think it's time for an update.
Yeah. Wow, babe, I'm impressed with your intro. I know you edit all of our episodes, so you hear it every day.
Yeah.
But that was the second time the third time you've ever done it? Because you've done some solo interviews.
Yeah, I've done some solo interviews, and it's always way tougher. And I want to get into that. Remember to clock that. That I want to get into how I'm impressed with you with the intros and your technicality and your interviewing prowess and all that. But the main thing we're here to do today is to really hear the reality of what it is to be married to a cult survivor from my perspective.
Yeah.
But I really did want to just hop in here and interview you for a change.
So this will be fun. And what else was I going to say about this? I think it's an update that we probably need. And I was thinking while you were doing the intro, I was thinking about the first time you ever did it, which was an episode, my fiance's issues with my Mormon past. And it was really funny hearing you do the intro, because we were still brand new when we had 2,000, or we just hit 1,000 subscribers. Yeah. So yeah, I thought, why don't we do this again? A lot has changed, obviously, and really get into some of the more deeper personal things that I may not touch on in our interviews because they're not about me. I like to relate to the guest as I feel like it's necessary for them and for the audience, but for the most part, I try to keep it more about the guest. So if you're wondering about my past, here we go.
Not just your past, but the reality of what it means to be a cult survivor who interviews a bunch of cult survivors and what that means. That's probably your most asked question, I would say, right?
Yeah, from friends and family is, what does this actually do to your mental health, hearing these stories daily? Because we do have a lot of friends and family who listen, but they're very honest about the fact that they can't listen all the time because sometimes it's really tough material to hear. And that doesn't mean we're going to stop doing it, of course. It just means that it's not for everybody at every point in their life, and that's totally fine. That's okay.
Okay. Well, we're going to get into that. What you normally do is you start, because for people that don't know who you are, I feel like give a super quick rundown.
This is what I make people do.
Of Mormonism. Let's start with your childhood. No, let's start with just why you think what you went through. Why are you a cult survivor?
Yeah, I think I say this a lot on other interviews with other podcasters who interview me, that Mormonism, mainstream Mormonism, isn't often considered a cult because from the outside it looks like a harmless religion, and people go to church on Sundays and they always seem bright and shiny and happy, and Mormons tend to be the most kind people you've ever met, very successful. And so people are like, is it really a cult? But from my experience, obviously I grew up in it. I was born and raised in it in Utah, so in the Mecca, which I understand is a different brand of Mormonism than in other places in the world or even in the United States. It still has this psychological programming that's constantly running in the back of your mind because of the way that they do things, because of the way they enforce the rules, implement the rules, and make you feel like if you don't follow them, you're failing in some capacity. Now, not everybody is going to internalize that doctrine in the same way. Some people are like, yeah, whatever, I go to church, I'm a good person, and they take it maybe a little bit more lightly. But if you're really truly following what the prophet is telling you, you're doing all the things they expect of you, it does take a severe mental toll, and it's often a toll that you don't realize is happening until you leave, until you separate from it, until you take a break, whether that's physically by stop going to church or mentally, physically and mentally out, starting to kind of dissipate from the doctrine because it's not sitting right with you. So there are many different ways that people can internalize it, but I was definitely the type that really went in on it because I felt like, well, they're telling me the only way to get to the highest level of heaven is to do all of these things. So if I don't do these things, I'm not going to make it. Was very black and white for me. And so, yeah, I was a little loosey-goosey on some of the rules that didn't matter in my mind, like wearing shorts, even though I still felt uncomfortable. I was like, but I want to wear the shorts and I want to wear the spaghetti strap, which was not allowed. Of course, now you can wear tank tops, not spaghetti strap, but the sleeves are getting shorter with the garments. So I really did internalize it quite a bit. And then I hit my breaking point when a bishop was berating me, telling me I wasn't spiritual enough, telling me that I was a bad influence on my boyfriend of 1 year who I was planning on marrying in the temple. I was only 19 years old. Very classic Mormon story of being young, feeling like the only way to progress in Mormonism and to get to the temple is to find that person, marry them immediately, have kids immediately. And so, yeah, I felt at my lowest point and I realized there was something that clicked in me. And I honestly think it was my mom. And I don't know if I've even talked to her about this yet. If she's watched the show, then she's probably heard me mention it. But there was a moment after the bishop's interview where I was just rock bottom and I went into my car and I was bawling and I called my mom and I was like, Mom, I need to do better. I'm not spiritual enough. And she stopped me in my tracks and was like, I'm sorry, what? And I was like, well, the bishop said, and she goes, no, 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 no. You are the most spiritual person I've ever met. You're more spiritual than me and your dad even. And you, like, what is he even saying? And she kind of woke me up enough to be like, yeah, you're right. I'm an amazing kid. I'm 19 years old. I'm still a virgin. I've still never tried alcohol or weed. And I've like all the major things I felt like I was killing it on. And I lived in Las Vegas. So I feel like I should get some extra props for that. And so she was the one who was like, no, that doesn't sound right. And because of that tiny little voice that questioned or challenged authority, because the bishop is the highest authority in the membership level, I decided to do some research on Mormonism. I found some things that were in direct conflict with what I was taught as a kid, as a teen, as a young adult. Things I realized that I was being lied to, things that people had tried to tell me in the past, and I didn't believe them because I thought it was ex-Mormon propaganda. And for the first time, I took a big old sigh of relief that, oh my gosh, I don't have to do this anymore. I don't have to kill myself over these rules. I don't have to judge myself or allow someone else to judge if they think I'm worthy or not. I can just have a relationship with God. I can just be. I can just exist for the first time. And as a young adult, that freedom is equally as empowering as it is terrifying. And so I just went off on my own and trying to figure things out. It was a really bumpy road, especially landing in Los Angeles and very crazy situations, my living situations and people I would end up dating. And it was definitely a rocky road, but all that to say, it was the best decision I ever could have made. I truly leaned into who I was as a person without these rigid rules and boundaries that were holding me back. And I felt free. And I feel like that's what I want for everybody, is to have that freedom of self. And of course, there is always going to be boundaries depending on where you live, in the state you live, in the country you live. There's rules and laws that we all need to follow. But what I mean is free to be yourself, free to express in the way that feels good to you, free to have relationships that I wouldn't have necessarily considered otherwise. We were always taught not to date outside of the faith. Well, Mormonism is huge, but also when you get down to the cities, there aren't very many people to choose from, which is why they have singles wards and specifically put you in a church where you have to be single and between 18 and 30. So yeah, it allowed me the opportunity to lean into myself and to figure out who I wanted to be. Yeah. So it was a really long answer. That was my nutshell version.
That was great.
Nutshell-y.
So you thought you were going to marry another Mormon?
Yeah.
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 One of the things that we discussed in that previous interview, the
first one,
fiance's issues with my Mormon past, was the pop culture. You've been out for how long, would you say?
Well, it was 2011-ish that I was done with it, but then I moved to LA and I didn't know anybody. And so I was like, oh, I'll go to church to meet friends, not realizing that you ideally want friends that aren't still in the mindset of being trapped. And it only took me about 2 months before I was like, I have to get out of here. I can't even sit in this lesson without wanting to scream. So yeah, 2011, I would say. It's been a while.
Okay, so that was what, 14 years ago?
Yes.
Is that long ago?
I guess.
Wow.
So.
Okay, so 14 years ago is when you had your Matrix moment, your waking up moment. So, right, so the pop culture stuff. So now that you've been out for 14 years and you've been exposed to a lot of the cultural things that people, that's like in the zeitgeist of conversation, and where do you feel you are on the spectrum of knowing pop culture references, and how do you feel as a member of society now versus then?
Something I go back and forth on all the time is, am I completely in the dark with pop culture because I grew up in Mormonism? Is it because I grew up in a small town that just didn't have access to a lot of things, even though we had the internet? We were still very isolated. Or was it just because I was never really interested in knowing who celebrities were and knowing certain TV shows? It's probably a combination of all of them, so I can't totally blame Mormonism for it. I can blame Mormonism for the no rated R movies, no explicit music type of stuff. That makes sense within the context of religion. But everything else, I don't know. It just seems like if it didn't come out before or after 2011, I probably just don't know what it is if it's rated R.
So you don't attribute that though to? So you're saying that you don't know what it is, but
well, I think it's a combination of all of it. So, like when you're talking to me about all of these classic scary movies around Halloween time that we're in right now, like yeah, I've heard of them, but it's not that I wasn't really allowed to watch them. They just were never in our home because my mom did a good job of keeping that away. So like there were, what was it, Scream? Remember my brother sat me down and made me watch it because I was probably like, no, I can't watch that movie. It's, it's against the rules. And he's like, you're going to watch it. Probably trying to force me into pop culture. And I remember feeling scarred for life because he made me watch that. And part of that was probably attributed to the fact that when I watched it, not only was it a scary movie and people are being tortured and killed, so that's already scary for a young kid, but at the same time, I associated those feelings with sin. Right. So it wasn't just scary, it was the devil is coming into my mind and telling me that this is wrong, and I'm being forced to ignore that, and I never want to do that ever again.
For example, we just watched The Shawshank Redemption the other day. Everybody that we talked to, like, you haven't seen The Shawshank Redemption? More like broad things like that.
Yeah. I mean, again, that's rated R movie, right?
Oh, so you're just
like, I just can't,
rated R.
Yeah. Like you can't go see it. In fact, when I went to go see The Exorcism of Emily Rose in our little 2-screen theater, the closest one that was like 20 minutes away, I remember going with a group of friends because your parents allow you to go to the movies, but ultimately they can't make you not go into a rated R movie if you're old enough to buy a ticket. And so I remember that was kind of like a little rebellion moment. And I'm like, ooh, I like ghosty stuff. Let's go in. I was so freaked out by that movie that I went home and profusely read my scriptures and was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll never do it again. I'll never do it again. Like I was convinced that the devil was in my bedroom. However, we did live in a haunted house. I don't know if that's because my brother played Ouija board at some point or what, but there was I've always been haunted by ghosts in some way, shape, or form. And so watching that felt like I invited a world of demons into my life, which could have been true. I don't know. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I'm still on the fence with that. But again, I attributed this to I have sinned. I knew better. I did it anyway. I feel horrible. I feel exposed. I feel like I could die in my sleep, like really extreme things that didn't need to be coupled with just being scared from a scary movie.
Yeah. Okay. Now that you've been playing catch up with the pop culture stuff, do you feel different than you did 14 years ago?
Oh, not really, no. Well, because you have to make an active effort to sit back and watch the things that you missed. And now that now that I can be more invested in pop culture, sure. Like, again, anything that came out after 2011, I'm probably in awareness of. But anything before that, you have to make an effort like we do or like you do to be like, okay, tonight I'm going to introduce you to Shawshank Redemption. And we sit down and watch it.
But I guess the heart of my question, and why I'm like harping on it, and why I'm like interested in it, I guess, is because so I had a very different childhood. My childhood was I was alone. I was like isolated. I was an only child. It was just my mom and I, and a kid of the 90s, and it was very much watching television, and it was all about escaping through stories, whether it was Goosebump books or anything, Full House, like you name it on television. So for me, though, it was like this connection to the outside world. Now we have that with the internet. We have had that. So I guess I was just wondering if that was something that you missed, or that's something that connection, part of the conversation. Like there's like always a cultural conversation happening, and now it's like, oh yeah, it feels kind of interesting to be part of it now versus not.
No, I'm indifferent, and I think the reason is because I grew up being so embarrassed by not knowing so many things that I avoid it in conversation almost entirely. Anytime movies come up, directors come up, even though I was in the industry working on film sets and TV shows, I always felt insecure about pop culture conversations. And so even now, I haven't really made an effort to truly dive into all of it and figure out the stuff that I don't know or that I haven't known.
So you feel as disconnected now,
Yeah.
Even though you have been playing a little bit of catch up.
Yeah, well, probably the same with alcohol, right? I never tried alcohol until we got married. And we'll talk about the first time I actually did try alcohol in a little bit here, but it's still like a world I don't know, and it's a world I don't really care to know because it was always void. So I guess I never felt the need to have to catch up to it. Same with pop culture. I never felt the need to have to be a part of the world. I'm just kind of content not being a part of it. But then at the same time, there is still that insecurity. Like anytime you talk about things and I'm just like deer in the headlights, I'm like,
It's like, you know what, now that we're kind of fleshing this out, it makes sense. So what I'm referring to is that connection with the outside world. So if there were a relationship with, let's say, a parent that you didn't grow up with, as an adult, why would I care about that connection now if it was never there?
It's like, whatever.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We're making some headway here. In a similar vein, so we're agnostic, and so we're open to that eternal question of what happens when we die, that this channel is essentially based on, that philosophical question. There's something that is interesting to me about people like us versus people that have the answer. What does it feel like to not have God in your corner? Like, is it a lonely road? People that have God in whatever capacity and experience hardship, there's always that, like, I'm good.
The lifeline.
Like, I'm covered. Yeah, like this is all for a purpose. So yeah, what does it feel like for you?
Well, I guess for someone to feel like they have that lifeline, because I've been that person, that also means the opposite is true, which is it can be taken away mentally if you feel you're not worthy of God. And that's something that is really difficult and scary for people. Not everybody believes that way. There are a lot of religions, though, that feel like either you're in God's grace or you're not. If your life is going wrong, it's because he's displeased with you. And that's also a really crappy feeling. So giving up that lifeline in the sense of belief, I don't feel like I'm losing anything, because what I'm gaining is a power within myself that I am my own lifeline. And I feel like if life ever does get truly difficult and I get that urge to just pray, I don't think there's any harm in it. But I also don't feel on a daily basis that I need that lifeline to be there, because I personally believe if there is a God, it's not a personified figure. It's an energy source that you can tap into at any time. It's not an energy source that is going to judge you or berate you if you're doing things that they perceive as wrong or sinful. I feel like we reap our own rewards, and there is benefit to not, quote, sinning, as the population would agree that certain things shouldn't be done, harming others. And so if you take away the word sin and you just think do no harm and be kind and still live within that moral compass and that moral framework without the judgment of sin and guilt and damnation, I feel like for me, that's a healthier place, because I grew up in such a strict mentality of guilt and fear and shame that I don't want a part of my life. That there is a place for guilt. If you do something wrong, you feel guilty about it because that's your conscience telling you should make it right. But that doesn't mean that you as a person are wrong or need to be, I don't know, sent to hell for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess I don't feel like I'm missing out because I do feel like there is an energy source that I can tap into if I need strength. But also at the same time, there is a strength in knowing I can tap into you because you're right here in front of me and you can actually be a lifeline for me. Or I can tap into my own intuition and my own thoughts and be like, okay, let's analyze this a little bit. Why am I feeling this way? What can I do to make it better? Do I need to reach out to an outside source like you, like my mom, or do I just need to look inward and see what it is that is causing me to feel this way? Or do I need to confront someone and be like, hey, you hurt my feelings and I just needed to get this out, rather than taking that power and putting it in a source that we don't know exists or not?
All right. Great answer.
Thanks.
One of my follow-up questions would be, we have this channel, you interview cult survivors. Does that help you in your healing process? But I don't want to get to that part just yet.
Yeah.
I want to get to the part of, so you interview cult survivors. Do you ever think you'd be here?
No. It's something that fell into my lap, but also didn't.
This is different from what we initially set out to do.
Yeah, when I first wanted to be in podcasting, it was definitely more on the mystical side because I had just had some really intense, life-changing spiritual experiences with plant medicine, which I detail in my episode 2, ayahuasca journey, which is ultimately how this channel ended up being here. But when I was in that headspace, I was very much leaning hard into the mystical. I was 100% on board with it. There's no other way. This makes sense to me. It feels right. And in some ways, it still does. So agnostic, but leaning more toward we're all spiritual beings having a spiritual experience, part of source energy, which some people would call new age. So with that, when we initially started the channel, my thought was, okay, how do I share what I've learned and also open up the stage to other people who have had similar experiences, including those with plant medicine, and maybe we can open that conversation to this could potentially be a method of healing for people. But what it ended up being was people weren't really interested in mystical. The algorithm did not want to push anything having to do with psychedelics because they're still becoming legalized again. And that just wasn't the need that needed to be filled. And so even with the experts, I find, or we have found, that having on an expert can be valuable, but not everybody's looking for the answer. I think more than ever, people are waking up to the fact that there was harm done in their childhood, that they were in a high control situation, and they just want to feel validated. At least that's my perspective. They don't necessarily want an expert to be like, this is how you heal, because everyone is on a different path, different journey. And what works for someone might not work for somebody else. And so I feel like what everybody has been really leaning into, and you can tell by all the cult documentaries that are out, is people want to hear someone's story so that they can go, oh, wow, I'm not alone. And then at the end, of course, we do always say, how have you overcome, or how are you overcoming what you went through? What has been your healing journey? So they always get that nugget at the end, but it's mostly just about setting free your story in a public way so that others can either cheer you on or relate to it.
It makes sense to listen to your audience and figure out exactly what people want and to hone in on it. You got to give some credit to the initial seed that was there, because I mean, I think it's all in the name, cults to consciousness, going from point A to point B.
Yeah.
So for number one, we're going to tell a story. And number two, it's going to be about people that have left cults.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think starting the second episode with Cara Burrell.
Yeah.
So I think that those were just additions. Were you talking about the healing modalities, maybe the mysticism,
the
experts? Those are kind of maybe like two other columns
that we just cut out.
Yeah. And we just focused.
Still there. Yeah. When I initially decided, like, okay, I'll do it, because you were like, babe, start your own podcast. And I was like, I don't know, this is crazy. And I was only talking about Mormonism before that. And so it's like, okay, but what if we did all cults? And my eyes were all bright-eyed, and I was like, oh, this is going to be great. And then I was introduced to the reality of what that actually means in real people, as we mentioned in the intro, in real people's lives, things that are dark and things that are traumatic and things that are difficult to hear. And I guess the naive ex-Mormon brain of mine just couldn't even comprehend the damage and the horrors that people could do to each other within the guise of religion or spirituality or self-help or whatever you name it. It got so much darker than I realized. And I guess it was just a very sobering moment of, wow, these people really need to tell their stories. And I am still continuously surprised by the things that people tell me that they've been through. And so I feel honored that they feel comfortable enough sharing that with me, a complete stranger or someone they met on the internet 2 minutes ago. But also, I guess I've just been really, I've been touched and moved at our audience because that's what really makes the channel beautiful. Of course, the survivors are amazing and telling their stories is so incredible, but our community that we've built has just been, I mean, there's no words for it, right? The people that come to rally around our survivors on social media, which is notorious for keyboard warriors and people saying hurtful, hateful things, and 95% of our comments are positive. I feel like that just really speaks to the need for this type of work and makes us want to keep going. When we continuously see those comments pour in, people appreciating the DMs that we get, I feel like that's what lightens our load a little bit, is knowing that it's making a difference.
Yeah, they really are that third collaborator. It's us facilitating, providing the space, the guest that's there to tell their story, and then the community.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. Thank you for supporting. That said, I guess that segues into the emotional toll that it takes. We tend to do 3 long form interviews a week that we post. We try to, and then maybe we'll go live. So that's a lot of stories. We're on our 271st episode. You do the things that it takes to expel the force out of your body from like the massages and stuff, or relying on me. How do you handle the trauma dumping week after week after week?
Well, I feel like to truly answer that question, we have to talk about my past. And is that something you want to get into right now? Of like, why certain interviews are harder than others and what it's like to be married to a cult survivor?
Is that something you want to get into?
Well, I do feel like it's relevant. We've talked about the pop culture, which is like the most surface level you can get. When you're in a cult, you're just unaware of those things. But the harder conversation would be, what is it like to be married to someone who has a past of abuse? With that being psychological, it could be emotional, sexual. I mean, any type of abuse coming out of cults is pretty common based on our interviews. So something that I've had to work on, I feel like with the psychological abuse, is feeling of being worthy. So that's something that has grown over time. And through the channel, I do feel like I have grown a confidence in myself of, yeah, I do have something to say, and I can add to the conversation in a way that I feel like would be helpful for someone, or I do have the ability to be a great listener, which I feel like is innate. People ask me, is this technique something you've learned, or is it just who you are? And I feel like I've always been the type of person that people can confide in. I don't know if any of that has to do with my trauma that we'll get into, as far as be quiet, don't say, just be quiet. And maybe that's why I was a quiet, shy kid, because of what happened to me. Or maybe it's just part of my personality. So it all kind of interweaves into itself. But so that's a psychological part that I think gets to me even now, is the worthiness. Are you even worthy? Does anyone even care what you have to say? Something that I felt like I've really improved on since starting this channel. The second thing would probably still be the purity culture within the being sexualized. Like, I want to choose when I want to be sexy, and I want to choose when I'm being taken seriously, and all of that. That's something that I think every woman has to work on at some point, regardless of if you grew up in a cult. So that's probably the other thing that always weaves in and out of my brain. Yeah, because you're punished for being too sexy in Mormonism, but you're told you have to be beautiful to attract the perfect spouse. So it's really hard to navigate. And then the third thing would be the abuse that I suffered. I don't know if we can blame it on Mormonism. Maybe. Having my dad as an abuser who also grew up in a very strict Mormon home, with high expectations. And I think he was the black sheep of his family. And I think he had some sexual repression going on, or I mean, I can only speculate. I don't really know for sure. But I think that probably contributed to why he ended up abusing me. So that's something that it does come up a lot. And I'm getting emotional because we're actually like, no, I'm in the hot seat. And I know how hard it is for people to tell their stories because I've had to do it myself. But here we are. So being sexually abused by my dad from infancy to 8 years old when it stopped, I think it really allows me the depth of understanding when I'm speaking to guests who have gone through either the exact same thing or abuse from somebody else, and understanding what it feels like to not be believed, to be told you're making this up. Why anyone would make this up is unfathomable to me. It makes no sense. If we're using our brains, it's not logical at all. It's the type of attention that people don't want, which is why most victims don't even talk about it, don't even tell anybody that they've been abused, because of that fear and because of the shame that comes with it. And so having that as my backstory, there are certainly interviews, and some people know this. So I talk about it rarely on the channel, and I have explicitly talked about it in maybe like 4 episodes. So I think some people have clocked this was probably a difficult interview for Shelise. And then that translates to, after the interview is over, just breaking down and sobbing, as you know, and trying to regulate again after hearing someone go through something so similar, and hearing how they maybe weren't supported, because at least I had my mom who had my back from the minute I said anything. And a lot of people don't have that. It's majority of people that don't have that. And so I do feel grateful in that way. But at the end of the day, it's still very triggering and confronting when I have someone telling a story that directly mirrors my own trauma. So that's probably the most difficult part. And at the same time, I'm never going to not take those interviews because it's hard for me, because I know that, I mean, even for myself, it's validating to hear someone talk about what they experienced and how they handled it and what they did to heal from that. So I probably just need therapy, to be honest. I know I need therapy.
So that segues into our sponsor for today's video.
Oh my gosh,
BetterHelp.
let's not. That was a total nightmare, and they think they re-traumatized me more.
Yeah, so...
Wait, what has it been like for you having to be that container for me with these difficult interviews?
Oh, I mean, easy. Easy in that it's like, obviously I'm going to be there for you. And I feel like you breaking down is rare. Like, I could probably count. The time that I remember that was the most vivid to me was, I think it was Audrey's episode, the Amish one, remember? So I had to, this is when I was still DJing, I had to do a gig, I had to prep for it, and we were like, Dad set on getting this video out at a certain time and day, and so you had to be the one to edit it, but it would have been the one that, like, babe, you take it, that I would have edited. So
You're thinking Daniela.
Was it Daniela? Yeah, all those Children of God episodes are just...
When we first started, it was a lot more difficult for me, and I think because I was so open, like my soul, my heart was just cracked open to every person I talked to. I wasn't able to distance myself from it, and now I'm able to dissociate enough to feel like, okay, I'm the interviewer, I'm not the person with trauma, but I can tap into it when I need to be compassionate and relate. But those first interviews, they got me way more than...
No, for sure. And still the Children of God ones are really rough on you. But no, I think this one was that Audrey episode.
That's the one that I broke down the second I shut the computer.
That's what I'm referring to.
Because I can distinctly remember being in the studio, and Audrey's story was she found out her husband had been abusing her daughters, and so she was talking about it from a mother's point of view. And I distinctly remember using my fingernails to almost hurt the inside of my hand off camera because I needed to feel something else other than what I was feeling, because I could not break down, because I needed to be a container for her. And I have to be that for everybody, right? I have to show emotion enough to make them feel supported and seen and cared for, but not too much to where they feel like a burden, because no one should ever feel like a burden when they're telling their story. And so I remember trying to keep it together. And you had just arrived. I think you even had Rhea. Was she a baby or something? You came to pick me up, because usually you wouldn't do that unless you had the baby. And so I shut the computer and I just collapsed onto the floor and just broke down. And that I vividly remember, because that doesn't happen often, where I end the interview and break down. Sometimes it's in the edit.
Yeah, this the similar situation. You were editing, you were lying down on the floor, you were editing on the laptop, and I was trying to get through the prepping.
That was Daniela.
You were trying to get through the edit, and as soon as you were done, you just closed the laptop, and then you just were lying there. You just put your head down and started sobbing.
That was the first time I broke down. Yeah, that's why it was definitely a memorable moment, because I realized later, after speaking to therapists, even though they were horrible, I learned that I was having a panic attack. And I had never had a panic attack before. So the entire 5 hours I was editing, I was having a panic attack, because I was fine during the interview, but when I was editing, it just reflected back at me in such a different way. And yeah, I think that was the first time that I'd ever experienced that, and experienced being triggered by my own trauma, and realized, oh, this is something I'm going to have to deal with now, because we interviewed her early on.
Yeah, well, we've interviewed her multiple times.
Yeah, she's amazing. And it was not her. It was not anything she said or could have done differently. It was just putting up a mirror, really, to abuse and realizing that it happens to so many people. And I think maybe that was part of the reason why I broke down, is because I started to realize how common it was, how horrific it can be for people, and how it's still happening in the world. And I think that realization was harder for me than just something happened to me and, well, it's just me, I can deal with it. But realizing on a larger scale just how much it happens is what really got to me.
So what you just said a little while ago about being strong for the guest is because I'm in the edit, and I realize you normally would be crying right there at that part, but you make it a point, it seems like, to not cry.
Yeah.
During the interviews.
I've cried a couple times. There have been a few times where I prevent myself from sobbing, and really it's like the physical things that I have to do with my hands to distract my brain, I guess, and to stay present or dissociate, like I mentioned, which in this case, I feel like it's a healthy thing for me to dissociate, and not necessarily, it could be a trauma situation, maybe, probably, but it also works, and that I can stay focused and present. And there's also something to be said about staring into the camera and not actually looking at their face, which would probably make it a lot more difficult. I just hear them in my ear, and I just really intently focus on their voice. And so if I were to look at their face, it would be a lot harder.
Man, there's so much to still talk about. With your father, I mean, do you want to, I guess, reveal any more about where you're at with your dad now, or anything you want to say on that?
Yeah, I guess if people have been paying attention, they probably have gathered that I have gone no contact. I was 30-something weeks pregnant with Rhea, and even though I had put up that boundary of, please don't text me, don't reach out to me, I'll reach out to you if I feel comfortable, he was continuously violating that boundary. And being pregnant with a little girl, it was too much.
He was going to come to our wedding.
He was going to come to the wedding. And that was my choice, because I was feeling very optimistic and very like, I'm good. Like, I think I can heal, and I feel like I can allow him that joy that he's probably wanting, because I haven't had contact with him for so many years. And by that, I just mean I'm not calling him and chatting up about my life. He would still text me even if I asked him not to. But I was like, okay, this would be a positive step in the right direction. And then anytime someone would bring him up, any of my friends who knew the story would be like, so is your dad going to come? Anytime they just said dad, my heart would sink and I would get really anxious. And I realized You're not ready for this. That's crazy talk. Why did you think that that's something you
Well,
can handle?
planning a wedding is so emotional and intense. You wanted to do this whole other thing that you had to tackle, which was confronting your dad or getting a resolution on that. You thought you could do both at the same time.
Well, it was naive. It was me wanting to be the best version of myself and me wanting to give the gift of joy to my dad. It was more about, I know how much this moment means to him. And if I could just get my shit together, I could allow him to have that. But then the more I thought about it, I was like, wait, this is my day to celebrate my love to you. And why would I bring in any factor, any little thing that could potentially crush that joy? Derail it. Yeah, because the more I started playing out the day in my head, the more I realized if he even looks at me a certain way, if he says anything to my friends that feels sexual or inappropriate, if he does anything, just a look could completely throw everything off. And why am I willing to risk that to put someone else's joy before mine? Because that's what I was doing. It was the people pleaser within Mormonism too, right? The forgive everybody, just love everybody, and blah blah blah, and don't think of your own feelings because you're supposed to forgive and love. And realizing that no, 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 I'm not spending all this money and planning this amazing wedding that's supposed to celebrate love to bring in someone who could completely destroy it in one moment, and his happiness is not up to me. And I feel like that's a huge thing that a lot of victims and survivors have to learn, is that your abuser's feelings are not on you. They're not your responsibility because they made their choices to harm you. Why should you go out of your way to make them feel better about the decision that they made? It makes no sense.
Yeah.
And so,
especially that decision to break that covenanted connection between a parent and a child.
yeah.
That's like the ultimate thing you can
yeah.
break.
Yeah. That was the best decision I made, retracting that invitation. And it further proved itself when he ended up calling my mom out of the blue and confessing things that I didn't even remember or know about.
Finally, right? Because
well, he had confessed to like 2 things that were bad enough for me to be like, yeah, you probably did the rest.
But on that side of his side of the family, you were a liar.
According to his side of the family, I didn't do anything.
So now finally he's admitting to it, everything plus some.
Yeah.
And he's doing that right before the wedding.
Yeah, which
further is just narcissistic and selfish.
Yeah, I guess the way that my mom told me about the conversation was, yeah, he was telling me as if he was proud that he remembered it, which, okay, sure, good for you. Like, I'm glad for you. Maybe you did truly forget about some of the things that you did, and I don't know why it would jog your memory 5 years later about what happened, but it did provide some sort of closure for me. I mean, hearing things that I didn't know about that he did to me, this is perpetual. It wasn't just 1 or 2 times. I mean, 10 or more. So hearing additional things both broke me, and also I was like, I knew I wasn't crazy. And also I just wanted to write a letter to his whole family and be like, God, I told you.
But also him not apologizing.
No. There was no apology.
Him coming from a place of like, I'm willing to admit it, but
Guess what I did?
Yeah.
Guess what I did to your daughter? You want to know all the things? There was this time, there was this time, there was this time, there was one time that this happened, but I shouldn't be shamed about this because masturbation's normal. And my mom's like, what are you talking about? So yeah, it was really confusing. I think a lot of survivors can relate to having a perpetrator who doesn't see the harm in their actions and is willing to admit to certain things without actually forming any sort of apology. It's just, well, I remembered it, or I said I did it, so aren't you happy about it? Shouldn't that be enough? And it was just, there's never been an apology. I think the closest apology I got was when I went to visit him in the hospital. He took up dirt biking at 60 years old and like on tracks and stuff. Ended up paralyzed from the waist down, I thought he was going to die. It's like, I need to talk to him. I was ready to forgive him. I was like, I need to go visit him in the hospital. My mom just happened to be in California when this happened, and she still lived in northern Utah. And so I drove with her all the way up to the hospital, completely breaking down many times, even seconds before I walked into the hospital room, because I hadn't talked to him or seen him in maybe 2 years or something.
This is, so just to place us on the timeline, this is after you had
confronted him,
but he had kind of lackluster agree to some of the stuff.
Yeah.
So that was like a few years ago, right?
So everything came out at the end of 2017, and I think this happened summer of 2019, I think.
Right, and our wedding was in 2023.
Yeah, so it's way before I met you.
Yeah.
So I go to the hospital, and he's laid up, and he's not doing well, obviously, and he's in a bad place. And I guess I don't know. Again, it was the person in me who thought that I could make it better, who thought that I would actually have a 1 hour, 2 hour sit down conversation with my dad and be like, hey, let's talk this out. Like, can you just be honest with me? I was ready to forgive him. Truly. I was like, let's talk about this. And one of the first things he did that I vividly remember, I was holding my boyfriend at the time. I was holding his hand. He sized up my boyfriend in an almost jealous way, which felt really awkward. And I talked to my mom and my boyfriend about it, and I realized that they also felt that. It wasn't just me projecting. And then he sized me up and said how beautiful I looked. And when he did, boyfriend squeezed my hand like, what the fuck did he just say? Because it clearly had an undertone of like hitting on me, which felt really gross, especially because he had admitted to my mom that he still found me attractive as an adult, his daughter. And so the whole conversation lasted about 5 minutes before he kicked us out of the room and was like, I have to do something. My nurse is coming in. You should go. And the one thing he said to me, it was all small talk. At the end, I said, well, I appreciate you holding the boundary, because at that point, I don't think he had reached out. And he's like, well, yeah, I'm doing what you wanted me to do. Like, really angry about it. And I was like, yeah, I just need some time, for my own mental health. And he just said something along the lines of, well, I'm sorry for the reality that you're living in and the reality that we're living in. And it's never going to change. So you just have to get over it. And I was like, oh, that's okay. We're not taking accountability. He's just saying you need to get over it. And so I just left the room sobbing, just like, what just happened? So yeah, after that, it was pretty rocky and didn't really want to be contacted by him. And I would get texts about how sad he was and basically blaming me for not talking to him. And he was sad. And
one of the really unfortunate things about this is that you have a lot of positive memories with him.
Yeah, I do. And there's a lot of times where I'm like, man, it'd be nice if I could just call my dad and have a normal conversation about how to fix this thing or how to go about this thing or whatever, because he's a very talented guy and he did bring a lot of positive to my childhood, a lot of joy. And I know that's also really common with people where it's hard to make it a black and white situation, because I do have love for him. He's my dad and he was a very present father. Do I think it ended up being some sort of obsession with me? Yeah. But at the same time, there are a lot of, he was the loudest one in the crowd at any and every dance competition that I had. And he supported me in so many ways. It wasn't, that's why it's so hard to differentiate between all of the situations and to see it in one big picture, because it's like the things can't coexist. It's hard for my brain to be like, this can be true and this could be true, because one is so damaging and the other would be core memories of my childhood that were positive. So it was really difficult for me to make the decision to go no contact.
You're also grieving him because in a way he's dead.
Yeah. And I tried so hard, again, because I felt responsible for his feelings. I felt like I can't be the daughter who abandons him, and he's in a wheelchair and he's barely living a life, and he hasn't even met you.
Which I don't think that'll ever happen.
That was a conversation that we had over and over and over and over, is, do we go sit down in his living room and confront him and talk to him, be like, can you just admit and apologize, and maybe we can move forward? But I just don't know if that's possible.
Especially now that we have kids.
A daughter.
I
feel like, ooh, that's been so hard. Because the moment she hit 6 months, I looked at her and I thought, who could do that to a baby? Who could do that to their own child? In every age that she hits, that was the same age that he did something to me that I know of. It's such a stark reality of what people are capable of. And you just see it in such a different way. Because I can think about it with myself, right? Like little Shelise. What did little Shelise go through? But when I actually see the age of my own daughter and realize that someone was capable of those things, it's really confronting, and cements my decision even further that I don't think I can ever allow him to meet her. Even if he doesn't have those tendencies anymore, which I don't know if is even possible. It's really hard to rehabilitate pedophiles. But it's hard because she's an amazing little girl, and I do want to share her with everybody and be like, look how amazing she is, and this is your grandchild. But there's no way in hell I would put her in a situation that it would feel exploitative to put my daughter in the same room as a man who did unspeakable things to me at that age. And here I am pregnant again. And just thinking, I feel sorry for him that he's never going to know them, because she's amazing. And I know our son's going to be amazing. And unfortunately, that's the decision that he made 30 plus years ago, to exclude himself from our lives. And so I just have to realize that he did that. Even though it's my decision, he essentially made that decision, and I'm just holding that boundary because it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right, at least right now, to have him in my life. Being a mom changes everything. And we talk about that all the time on the channel. And I can really empathize with people who have been through similar things, and they say almost identical things, that when you have a kid, you look at them and you go, how could someone be capable of doing this to their child?
I will do my best to be the male role model for our kids.
You're already doing an amazing job.
Thanks, babe. Well, let's get out of that topic. But yeah, we mentioned kids, mentioned a boy. Well, I guess that's another.
The other sad news. Yeah, I mean, we can talk about it. The other reality of this channel is that it never stops, and it kind of can't ever stop. We can't really take breaks because this is our full-time job, and we rely on the income. Our child relies on the income, and when you stop feeding the algorithm, it stops pumping the videos, right? So that's why we always say, any way you can like and support and comment and share, it's the best way to support us, because it really is. And so with that being said, even during these difficult times, we have to keep trucking. We have to keep recording. So one of the hardest ones lately was 2 days after we announced that we were pregnant, we had a silent miscarriage, and the heart just stopped. Maybe the baby will pass on her own. Waited a week, took interviews while that was happening, and was recording with people. The show must go on. And then ended up needing to have surgery, a DNC. And 2 days after the surgery, I was recording with
Tembi?
Yeah. 2 days after the surgery, I was recording with Tembi. And I realized because we had held on to that one for a little bit, waiting for the right time to release it. And when I looked back at the footage, I was like, oh, I looked horrible. What was going on then? And then I realized it was only 2 days after the surgery, which is kind of insane.
Well, that whole topic of having a miscarriage, I mean, so I remember when we were in it, because that sucked. I mean, this is only a few months ago.
In May.
So for one, you're grieving, you're mourning your baby.
Yeah.
And then you talk to people about it, those people that you confide in to tell, that you've already told that you were pregnant to begin with. Now you got to go back and tell them, okay, this happened. Usually people's reaction is, yeah, it's really common, such and such. My sister happened, and my mom happened to this. That's great that they're connecting in that way. But I feel like one of the things people don't talk about is that while also grieving your baby that passed away, the baby's still inside of you. And that's just such a odd feeling.
Yeah.
Especially in our situation where we wanted the baby to pass naturally and we were trying to avoid
surgery. And we're just waiting and waiting and waiting. It's like
you can go septic.
It feels like I had an atomic bomb that at any point it could go off, and I'm reading the forums on what it feels like, and people talk about excruciating pain and bleeding and cramping, like the worst period of your life times 10. And so just on edge, waiting for that to happen, hoping it'll happen, but then also not being ready for it because what you wanted was a healthy baby. And we were so far along. We were 12 weeks and 4 days, I think. So it's not, I mean, the baby looked like a baby, you know. We have the apps, we saw the development. And so it was just so difficult. And I think what you were talking about is, yes, people want to connect and tell you that it happens all the time. But imagine if I got in a car accident and I broke my neck and we told our friends, oh my gosh, Shelise got in a car accident, she broke her neck. The first thing they're not going to say is, oh yeah, car accidents happen all the time, you know. As a society, we've chosen to become numb to the fact that miscarriage is painful. And so we placate by saying it's normal and it happens all the time, but that doesn't make it less painful.
That, and there's a lack of conversation about it.
Yeah. And I guess I was surprised. I know people don't know what to say, and I already just put down the things that people do say. And so, like, what do you say? It's hard, but I guess I expected more of, how are you feeling? Are you okay? Or
versus like, well, the show goes on.
Or silence. Or one of my friends said when we got pregnant, she's like, oh, you have a redo. And I was like, oh, what? Like,
when you got pregnant again.
When I got pregnant again.
So you should probably say that you are pregnant.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
We did already say we were pregnant.
Yeah, so we're pregnant. Yeah, oh boy. We got pregnant again.
We got pregnant again a couple months later.
Planned, because the one that passed was not planned. As quickly as she came, she went.
Yeah.
But we are pregnant right now.
We are pregnant, and we're very excited, and everything's going well as of recording this for 13 weeks.
Yeah. So our due date ish is
in beginning of May.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the miscarriage it was really difficult, and it was painful, and it was scary, and I mean, there's not much else to say about it except that we continued going with the show. I mean, I got violently sick after I did have to push an interview. About 5 days later, I got horribly sick, and you had gone to play your last gigs DJing in LA. So I was here with Rhea. Thankfully, my bestie, Tia, came out. She just happened to have a trip planned around that time, and she nursed me and took care of Rhea.
Yeah.
So it was a hard time, but yeah, back to recording. Back to our amazing community leaving comments being like, oh, you're glowing. And it stung a little bit because I wasn't actually pregnant. I was still grieving, but I mean, nobody knows. And I don't blame anybody.
You're glowing because of the sponsor of today's video.
Stop.
Jones Road.
Stop. I did put it on before this. But anyways.
We were being a little bit one foot in front of the other on that, putting the cart before the horse by making the announcement a little too soon. I'm not going to.
Yeah, and the reason you say it was a little too soon, we probably shouldn't have. The genetic testing came back that there was a very high chance of the trisomy deformities where the baby, if it did survive all the way to birth, would probably die within a few months. And so that was already, it felt like a death sentence that we were terrified of. We went to go get further testing, and that's when we found out there was no heartbeat. So I think it was a genetic deformity that the body detected and terminated the pregnancy. And so we had got the test back that something could be wrong, but then Mother's Day was coming. We wanted to release the episode with my mom that we had filmed a week before that. And we're like, let's just go for it. Everything will probably be fine. And then 2 days later, there was no heartbeat. So we did wait till the 3-month mark, like you're supposed to, like people do. But I think it was important to mention the miscarriage because obviously belly is showing. By this point, I would have been 8 months pregnant. 8 months pregnant, and people were probably expecting us to have a baby next month. But now we are pregnant with a very healthy baby boy, as far as we know. The test came back normal.
Yeah, and we can't come up with a name for him
and we
for
don't
the life of us.
Have a name.
If you have an idea for a name, drop it in the comments because this is a deliberation that happens just about every single day.
Every day. And
we cannot figure it out.
Yeah, if you got something unique but not trendy, let us know.
Do you think, we talked about you taking on the trauma, but do you think that these interviews affect the baby?
They affect the baby if I'm affected. So if I'm able to keep my cortisol levels down and remain mentally stable, I think that the baby's doing just fine. I think Rhea would have probably been affected the most because that's when I was getting the most triggered last pregnancy.
Rhea was there for a good chunk of interviews while she was in your belly.
Yeah. And I feel like I was having a harder time that pregnancy metabolizing the interviews than I do now. It's still difficult, especially when I feel like I'm going to throw up every 5 seconds.
And the brain fog.
The brain fog hasn't been as bad this pregnancy.
Not yet. Welcome to the second trimester.
Yeah. But
I remember editing some of those episodes where I'm like, yeah, babe, you're trying to think of the tip of the tongue syndrome.
I say the pregnancy brain hasn't caught up to me, but this interview alone, I've already not been able to conjure up words that I was thinking of. So yeah, you guys probably noticed that. But overall, this pregnancy feels a lot better. I'm mentally in a better place
than the
previous that we lost. And I'm optimistic. I think the timing will be a lot better. And still feeling good about it. But yeah, still doing interviews while pregnant, while not feeling 100%. So if it looks like I'm not interested in a guest, that's not the case. Probably just going through some pregnancy symptoms. Could be just a little fatigued because pregnancy is tiring. But I hope that I give each guest the amount of attention and energy that they deserve.
Is there anything else we should talk about?
Yeah, let's talk about the effects of the channel on you, Mr. Producer, Editor, behind the scenes guyer. I guess we didn't really mention that in the beginning if people weren't familiar because you haven't been on in a long time. This is Jonathan. He's my husband. He's the editor, behind the scenes, producer, the moderator of the lives.
Yes, and it also goes, we should say that we have a team, 2 editors currently. Yeah. But they're more of like assistant editors where we give them the episodes, the interviews. Mm-hmm. They take their pass at it, and then I take it and I refine it.
Yeah.
And but yeah, the producer part's the more engaging stuff because it's about who's going to be on, when can we get them, how do we roll out the interviews, connecting with our team to make sure this is getting done.
There is a lot of behind the scenes.
Package it all.
Yeah, that people don't probably anticipate or think about because why would you? But that is the order in which we record is almost never the order in which we release.
Yeah.
Because we try to take your feedback as the audience and see what you're responding to, what you want more of, what you maybe didn't resonate with as much as far as the topic goes. And so we're constantly moving things around. We could film an episode on a Wednesday and release it on a Friday and have 5 episodes that were recorded previously that just didn't go out yet. So we do things very last minute in that sense. We're trying to read what would be the best way to put things out and the best way to promote our guests and their stories, and in the best way that will get them the most engagement and eyes on their story as possible.
Yeah. So that's Ed. What was your question?
What's the hard part for you? The workload, the trauma, the working every single day with no breaks, really?
You mean like the entrepreneurial, we have this business that has to do what it does and keep moving, and
layered with the heaviness of the stories themselves.
As far as the heaviness goes, I feel a little desensitized at this point, to be honest. I feel like it's just part of our lives now, listening to traumatic stories, and like any one of our listeners that listens on a regular basis. It's just kind of part of your life. I'm not too affected with that, I would say. I think part of it is that I understand that coming on the channel, providing the platform is really therapeutic for our guests. It's really therapeutic. I think about the benefits. So that allows me to bypass the negativity of the trauma. So as far as what it means to be this content machine, and what it means to, at this point, be 3 years into it, and how can it grow? How can we make it better? How can we innovate? How can we be consistent, as you mentioned, without any days off, really? There is a part that I will say that I feel very fortunate that it feels very fulfilling, because it's great work that we're doing, because it is advocacy work. So it's always been the case that there's two sides to it. So it's an advocacy channel, and we're helping people, and that's amazing. On the other end, this is our job, and it takes time and effort, and for that we make money. As far as those two things go, yeah, it's a job. I'm happy that this is our job versus having to do anything else. Like if I had a 9 to 5, for example, one of the things that I do find really fulfilling, I get to build this thing, because that's what it feels like we're doing. We're building. Every time we put out a new interview, every time we get a new interview, every time the catalog expands and it's growing the reach, I feel like we're just building this mountain that much more. So to get to build this thing with the person that I love, and for us to mutually be excited by it, to care about it, within the context of our marriage, we're blessed.
Pretty great. Hashtag blessed.
We're pretty blessed. Yeah, it's pretty great. And then it's fulfilling on the end on the side of like if you do go to a 9 to 5, that day kind of came and went. But for us, it really is the building process. So we're so into like quantifying things. So there's like the element of it of like, I'm the type of analytical type A type of person where I like seeing numbers. And so like the fact that it's so quantifiable, know exactly where it stands at any given point, and why. So there's that side of it. I went to film school. I decided when I was 21, I wanted to be a film director. And as life is, it never really works out the way you think it's going to work out, but it's some version of what you thought it would be. Yeah, there was always this entrepreneurial side to me. And obviously there was a side of me that loved filmmaking and production. And then there was a side of me that loved storytelling. So here's where we're at with it. I almost prefaced this whole interview by asking you, did you think that you'd be here? I didn't think we would be here, but in another way, I kind of did think that we would be here. I was in YouTube at one point with my brother. I did learn a lot about YouTube. And when I saw you going through what you went through with your previous podcast, co-hosting, where they broke up with you and kicked you out, and like it's almost like the competitiveness in me and my belief in you of like, yes, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it better, and we're going to take it to YouTube. In that moment, because I think you asked me at one point, like, did you know that we would end up becoming successful at this? And for me, it was, the answer to you at that point was yeah, because I think we had everything that it took with how we our complementary skill set. And but also I think, to kind of wrap this back to you, those first few interviews, like I knew you were good, but And I did say I wanted to get back to this. I knew you were good, but I didn't know just how good you were.
Thanks, babe.
Those first few interviews, because I don't think people, or maybe people do realize it, I don't know, but it's really tough to be in front of the camera. And all of our guests that we have on, it's really difficult. I mean, these are real people telling their real stories. It's really hard, especially when it's trauma, to recount your story. Like you're going to sit down in front of a video conference call, on your laptop, and you're going to just sit there and for an hour and a half tell us your story. So yeah, I mean, that's why we edit people to make it a slipperier listen. As far as like being a content creator, someone that's like, I'm going to sit in front of the camera and I have to relay this information to you in a way that engages you and is pithy. And there might be some points I have to hit. To do that in front of the camera and to make it seem so effortless, to fill the space for 2, 3, 5 minutes at a time without having to cut, let's say, it is so difficult. It is so difficult. And then there's nerves that can get in there. So I guess I am the most, and have been the most impressed with you by your ability to think on the fly, to know exactly what to say, to fill the space, and to do it in such a captivating way that clues everybody into the compassionate person that you are, so that they feel like they're on the journey with you. I think other people are just as probably impressed with your skills.
Thanks, babe.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to take the compliment. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. So like I said, I knew you were good, but I didn't know you were just how good you were. So, because you're an actress. So I mentioned that because that's I wanted to be a director, and I am, I guess, a producer to some capacity now. But your goal was to be an actress. So this wasn't exactly how you saw it, but look, you're in front of the camera.
Can I let you in on something? I don't know if I've told you this before. So I went and got a reading. It was kind of around the time that my life was imploding, between 2017, 2019, where depression was at an all-time high. My bookings were at an all-time high. And basically rock bottom was at an all-time low. It was just one of those, if you know moments of your life. Fitness all-time high. Anyways.
Extremes. Everything extremes. Like extremely high, extremely low.
Yeah. All at the same time. So I remember going to one of those psychics because I was in New Orleans or tarot readers. It's like, can't read my cards. I was like, am I going to be an actress? Am I going to be successful? Because I was like, when is it going to happen? When am I going to book that role I just wanted to book that one role on TV? Because once you have that one role booked and filmed and aired, then other agencies will be like, yeah, we'll represent you. And then other casting directors will say, oh, you're trustworthy. We'll put you in the room. Because I feel confident in my skills, but I was at that point where I just couldn't book that stupid co-star that would open all the doors. And so I remember asking, and she pulled the Sun card, and she was like,
the Sola card?
Yeah. This was before I changed my name, actually. Didn't even make that connection.
Well, Sola Sun.
Sola, yeah. So I remember her saying, this is great news. This is, you will be in the light. I see you having fame. And I was like, yes, oh my gosh, it's going to happen. And then a couple years later, I was getting a reading by somebody else who I think it's based on astrology. So it was like totally different type of reading, but still a reading nonetheless. And she was like, yeah, I just don't see you being fulfilled in acting. I can see you in the spotlight, but you're not playing a role. You're being yourself. You're shining within your own inner goddess energy. You're not pretending to be someone else. Yeah. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. I'm just going to keep going with acting. Needless to say, she was right. Because I do feel like within this channel, I'm not playing a role. I'm stepping into my power, helping others feel empowered. And I still get to have that feeling of being on camera and doing what I do best, which is relaying the information, like you said, taking all the skills that I've learned from acting, mostly commercial acting, because it's all improv, learning how to think on my feet, tell a story, help guide the conversation with all those different skills. I feel like have come in handy, especially now that we are doing sponsors. I'm like, wow, I'm actually still a commercial actor, aren't I? But I haven't totally given that up. I'm still taking
You're not really acting because you believe in the products.
Yes, but I'm saying, like, as far as delivering delivering copy that the brand prefers
Lines
us.
that
Hitting the points that the brand wants us to hit. But yeah, I still haven't closed that door in acting. And we were talking the other day. I'm like, maybe one day someone will come to me and be like, you're perfect for this role. And I'll get to do my whole theatrical acting like I wanted to be on a TV show or have some role in a movie. I think that would be the cherry on top. But if it doesn't happen, it's not the end of the world because I do feel fulfilled. And commercial acting is still fun, which we're still auditioning for.
Have any of your tarot readers in the past referred to you as a starseed?
Yeah.
Do you have gotten that?
Yeah. All the time.
Okay. Yeah. Well, there you go. I think you're a starseed.
Thanks, babe.
Yeah.
So I think the way I understand it is a soul that chooses to come down, experience hard things, and be a light for others in the world.
Yeah, you're that vessel that's meant to amplify the voice of other people that have had trauma.
Yeah, I do feel like that is a way of looking at trauma and past difficulties with a lens of maybe it was all for a purpose, not to excuse the predator. But I guess it's a more empowering way of looking at it, which some people choose to do, of maybe I chose this path so that I could be a beacon of light for other people or help other people. I don't really know. In some ways it feels resonant. In other ways I'm like, no, because that kind of takes away the free will of people to not harm others. So yeah. I don't really know, but yeah, maybe it's true.
I feel like we should say a little bit about too what our future plans are besides growing our family and obviously always growing the channel, is that we have filmed a documentary.
Are we going to talk about that?
Well, very broadly.
Okay, we're going to be vague.
Yeah,
we can't tell you all the details yet.
Us being us, I feel like whenever there's a moment, so I stopped DJing because for a while there was this idea of having 2 full-time jobs and raising
Rhea. Too much.
It was too much.
Something had to give.
But I think one of the things that we've always connected on since we met and started dating was that we're both we're go-getters and we like to fill our plates with as many things as possible and see where we can take things. So for me, when we get together, there's the foot's on the accelerator the entire time. There's just never this channel really is 24/7. We're lying in bed, deliberating something. And but they say no days off. It's there really isn't a day off.
And if we do take a day off, we feel like we're behind and we should have been editing or working on
something. Or our body just stopped. You find me napping. I'm sorry, my body is just you have to stop, dude. But that said, I feel like there was this moment of I finally put an end to the DJing and all right, we're full-time YouTube. You stop your job as a seamstress and then Rhea transitioned out of baby mode into toddler. And it was okay, things are a little bit easier and we can catch our breath a little bit. It's but
why would we do that?
What could we do to make this way more difficult on ourselves again? And it was, why don't we film a documentary?
Ourselves
with our own money, and we've partnered with someone who we can't tell you with. We have to be super aloof about this, but we're super excited.
We're in
post-production.
Principal photography is done. We've done the interviews. There are a few things here and there that we're gonna get
from where we're at now.
Yeah,
which we already have all of the footage. Yeah, so
we know it's a winning piece. The people who are involved are all incredible people. And it's been a whirlwind because it's the channel, but on steroids as far as emotions.
We picked this cult for a reason.
Yeah, and production, and we're doing all the production ourselves, which I feel like we're able to do because we've both worked on sets and we know what it takes and we know what needs to happen.
Pretty seamless production.
And we had 2 other people on our crew, sound and DP. So yeah, it was great. I think we did a fantastic job, and now it's in our hands to make sure it gets seen, make sure it gets out there. But the potential is definitely there.
Yeah.
And we need to do all that before this little guy is born. My bump is bumping right now.
Yep. All right.
We thought it'd be nice to just jump on and do a little personal episode for anyone who's interested in what goes on behind the scenes and in our day-to-day lives and what we've been going through and kind of the hardships and the ups and the downs, all of that. So I guess the last thing I would say is thank you to everyone who is watching. Leave those words of encouragement down below. No, you guys are always amazing. Anytime we give personal updates, you always flood the comments, and I'm just overwhelmed with how many people are so kind and loving, and we really appreciate you and your support. And any amount that you watch a video, like, share, comment is helpful to us.
Shelise is a real person.
I'm a real person telling my real story. And yeah, we just really love you and your support. If you've made it this far, you're a real one. Thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing and being part of our core audience. Thank you for sticking around. And follow us on Instagram if you want more updates. We always post the live. I know our lives are kind of sporadic and we try to have a schedule, but again, we do things a little last minute and we have to work with people's schedules. So if you ever want to be notified of a live, the best place is at our Cults to Consciousness Instagram. We always post there when we're about to go live. If you want more personal updates, our personal Instagrams, I think, are in the description. Shelise Ann, Jonathan _Rosales Jonathan.Rosales_.
That's the one.
That's the one. So,
and while we're here and you've made it this far, yeah, go ahead, follow us on Instagram, but also the Clips channel. I'm going to start posting clips again, and we think that's a really great idea, is that separate channel, increments of interviews go out, because one of the things we want to do with that is post current videos, like videos that just came out. So if you might, cause I see comments that are like, I didn't know that your video, like on our main channel, video came out or the live was scheduled or whatever it is. So it's just another way to be notified that there's an interview that you might want to check out, is this Clips channel. So when you're done with this, go to that Clips channel, go subscribe, help us out with that.
This is the perfect episode to catch up on all of our newest patrons. I've been collecting a list, and now's the perfect time to say them. So thank you so much for joining us over on Patreon. We have Sarah, Mercedes, Megan, Christine, Amy, Sassy, and Lauren. Your support means the world. We really appreciate that. We're constantly upgrading our gear. It helps us with so many different things. Helps us with babysitters right now, so we can pay to do an episode together, which doesn't happen often. So we appreciate you. If you want to be a part of that, it's just patreon.com/cults to consciousness. And I have been saying this. If you stuck around for a while, you know, the last year, I'm like, I swear, guys, channel memberships, they're coming. At the time of this episode airing, and we're holding ourselves to it because we have to, we will have channel memberships available to you, which just gives you extra perks within YouTube itself. So I think there are some of the perks like early access to videos or special lives that we may do once a month with certain tiers. We're going to do our best to give you guys actual real-time perks, and I think it also gives you special badges and emojis you can use.
So there are some people that have been on our journey for years and like 100+ comments over the years.
Yeah,
you get recognized for being part of the community and having a voice within the community. What we love about this, which is that triangle we're talking about, where it's the community is part of it, it helps us amplify the community and showcase and love on you guys.
Yeah, and it helps us recognize which one of you are part of the community in a more permanent way, so that we can, because it's so hard when we see all these amazing comments to know who's been around the longest and who's been supporting us for a while. So obviously no pressure. If that's something that is interesting to you, then go for it. But no, by any means, you don't have to do it. Just commenting is enough. But if you want to go that extra mile, then you will have the option to do so. All right. Are you going to do the outro too, because this is your episode?
Yes. If you like this episode, make sure to click on one of these two episodes that are very similar that you're probably